Happy Friday, everyone. It's a lovely sunny day again, so I thought I would record a video to help you liberate your minds. So, how do you get unstuck? So, one of the typical things I will hear as a coach or a therapist is, I will be happy if, or I will be happy when. And when someone says those kinds of sentences, they are creating a negative loop for themselves, because when or if relies on an external something to change, right? And the only thing that you have control over is what you think and what you do. And those things will drive your feelings, right? And it's the feelings that get you stuck. Because the moment you don't feel like it, which is most of the time, and you let that feeling then drive the kind of thinking which talks you out of doing things, then generally you will procrastinate. Now, there may be other things going on there, but there are ways of breaking yourself out of such a rut. And the way that you do that is using something called future sourcing. So instead of being here, wondering and kind of craving something over there in the future, what we can do is we can source the emotional state from having whatever that might be, whether it's a physical thing or an experience. And because we are now feeling that thing now in this moment, it breaks us out of that rut, because the feeling changes, which means the thinking can now change, and we can actually start to use the resources that are now created to find a next step to take us towards the goal. So how do we do that? Well, I will have this in a session and I will say to the person, so let's use an example. What if they want a house, or they want to go traveling, right? Something like that. I will say to them, what will having that or doing that do for you? What will it give you? How will that help you? Now, by asking that kind of open question, the person has to go in, right? They have to try that on. They have to start running some of those ideas. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a shift. Now, it may not be a fully emotional shift just yet, right? They might just say, well, I will feel more free, more independent, more happy. Now, happy, just saying the words, I will feel happy, is kind of useless, because it doesn't really have any kind of weight behind it. It's better to say, okay, and you can do this, is the next stage of it. You will say, okay, so what will you do? If you're feeling happy, what will that drive you to do? What kind of things will you do if you feel happy? Or what's possible? What's possible if you feel like that? Or what does that do for you, being happy? Well, it means I can then go and do this, or feel like, and then you're starting to, when they start to imagine actually doing things or experiencing things, that's when the emotions start to come up. And if you want to ask another sort of question to yourself as well, is, if I was doing all of that and then feeling all of that, what kind of a person would I be, right? So that kind of thing is going to generate also a more of a self-image or a self-confidence idea. You're sort of now trying to think of how your identity, how your personality, how the kind of person you will be will change, which again lifts you out of any loops you were in before, so you can start to think in a more creative way. And when you've got that going, you will feel all kinds of emotions in your body that just weren't there before. It's opening doors. You're moving up levels into a resourceful state, at which point you can then ask yourself, so what is the logical next step, right? What is it that I could do now that would take me a step closer to that new reality? And what you might find that's quite interesting is a lot of people that want things like sports cars or, stuff, when they've now got in touch with and had an experience of how they will feel when they have that thing, suddenly they don't need that anymore. Because if we're honest, the only reason that we want those things is to make us feel a certain way. But if we can feel that way here and now in this moment, then suddenly our priorities change. It's like, well, I already kind of feel like that, so I don't need to spend that amount of money on that midlife crisis, and I've done that. Then you will basically say to yourself, well, what do I really want? If I can feel like this all the time, what's more meaningful? What will actually bring me a long-term feeling of that? Or what would having this feeling that I've been chasing, now that I have it, how can I contribute to something bigger than myself? All right? So don't get stuck in, I will be happy when, I will be happy if, because those things are out of your control and those moments will never come because you will stay stuck in that loop. So instead of doing that, think about whatever it is that you do want and say, so what would it feel like, right? What would it be like to have that? What will that give me? How will that help me? Start to stimulate those kinds of ideas and keep taking it a step further. And what will that do for me? And having that, and what will that mean? Ask these kind of open-ended questions until you really feel like you're there, you have it. What that would give you, you have now, you feel it now, and then ask yourself, so now that I can already feel like that in this moment, because happiness and all of these things are a choice, right? You can feel happy now, you don't have to wait. And if you can feel like that now, what really matters? What do you actually want to do with that feeling, with your life? So you can go quite deep with that. So have some fun with that. Have a fantastic weekend in the sun. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you again soon.